Begin today the Gemara on Daf Chavav Amud Beis, where it says Amalei Rav Shimi Barashi, like 7 or 8 lines up from the bottom of the Yamud. The Gemara here is in the middle of a discussion. This is the middle of a sugya, which began like 2 blot ago, where the Gemara brings the Inyan, or actually Halach Moshe Sinai, that Rabbi Yochanan said Halachi ben Nazir, that when you have money that was dedicated for the different karbanas that a Nazir has to bring, and their mo is stumin, it wasn't specified what these funds, which part is going to be for which carbon, then it can't be brought for the Nazir either because he died or because it's a wife that the husband nullified the neder. So then what happens with the leftovers? So if it's mo is stumin, so then it all becomes an adava for the Beis HaMikdash and you bring a oila, even though there's a chatas that's inside of it. But if it's mois mufurashin, if it's specified that there's a chatas in there, so then the chatas, the money of the chatas, has to just be disposed of in the Yam HaMelech. So the last point we learned in the Gemara here, on Daf Chavav, the Gemara brought that this whole halacha, the name of Rav, the whole halacha of mois stumin applies only to money. It doesn't apply to other things, like if it was behemis, if it was a nasche, or for the Gemara brought another example. There was machlokes about a nasche. The last example the Gemara brought was from svar shel kairis. If you had a pile of pieces of wood, that if that was dedicated for a carbon and it wasn't specified the karbanis in it, it doesn't matter. It's not money. It's not money. So the halacha Moshe Sinai does not apply. Okay, so now based on this last point here, the Gemara is going to ask a question.
And that's also halacha Moshe Sinai. It doesn't apply.
Yeah, it's part of the halacha Moshe exactly. The halacha Moshe Sinai was said in such a oifen dafke benigay to mois, not something that's not defined as mois, as money. Oh, Malay Rav Shimi Barashi Rav Papa. So Rav Shimi Barashi asks Rav Papa on this. Mai tamai drabanan da amri mois v'loy beheme v'loy nasche. So the Chachamim said that the halacha Moshe Sinai was only for money. And therefore, if you dedicated behemis, so then this halacha, that if it's stumin, that it would become an adav in the Beis HaMikdash does not apply. And v'loy nasche, and also not a piece of silver. And ma'ois, the halacha Moshe Sinai was only for money, v'loy svara, which refers to the pile of pieces of wood, beams or beams of wood. So elameyato. So if that's the case, that we only apply this regarding money and not regarding any of these items. If so, I should say the same thing. Ma'ois v'loy oifis, that halacha Moshe Sinai was said only if you set aside money, and it's again ma'ois tumin, and it's leftovers. So what happens is it becomes an adava. But I should say v'loy oifis, that this should not apply if you have birds that were dedicated for a carbon and it's stumin. It's the money is not specified, so over there it should not apply. Okay, because just like we said, it doesn't. This halacha Moshe Sinai does not apply regarding behemah or regarding nasche, regarding all these different items. So the halacha Moshe Sinai shouldn't apply regarding oifis as well. So the Gemara says, "Navachi teime." If you'll argue and say hachanami, take, it's true. The halacha Moshe Sinai does not apply regarding oifis, just like that's the rule we just said. If so, Rav Chiste. So what did Rav Chiste say? Rav Chiste said regarding oifis as follows: Ein hakinin mispar shois. When you have kinin, that has to be brought for a carbon. So there are different situations where you have to bring 2 birds, one for a chatas and one for a oila. Now these kinin, these birds that you bring as a carbon, when are these birds considered to be that it's specified? Which one is a chatas and which one is a oila? You have only 2 options. Ela, I belekichas bailim, or when the bailim bought these 2 birds and the bailim themselves specified right then that this one's being bought for a chatas and this one's being bought for an oila. So then it's clear what's what. Or if the bailim did not specify at that point, I basias kayin. If the bailim didn't specify, then only when the kayin brings this bird for a chatas and this bird for an oila, then it's considered to be specified. But if when the bailam bought these birds for his karbanis, he did not specify what it's for, so then the birds are considered to be unspecified until the point that the carbon is being brought. Okay, so what does that mean? So if you bought these 2 birds, so then it's not specified. It's considered to be stumin. It's considered to be birds where it's not clear which one is the chatas and which one is the oila. But the question is, so why are we saying that it falls into the category of a carbon, which is not specified, it's stumin, but hamois gemirin law, didn't we say that the halacha l'Moshe Misinai that defines this halacha of stumin only applies to money, and anything other than money, like all these items we mentioned before, whether it's animals, whether it's a nascha, whether it's a svar shel eitzim, all these different things. So even if it's not specified clearly, but it's considered to be like the chatos that's there in it is specified. So over here, if you have a bird, you have two birds. One has to be a chatos and one has to be an oila. If I remember correctly, Taisus over here actually says that the situation we're talking about is that he bought one bird. He only bought one bird, and he didn't specify regarding that one bird whether it's an oila or whether it's an chatos. And then what happened? This person died. That's what Rav Chisda was saying, this halacha about. What was the relevance of what Rav Chisda was saying? Ein akinin misparshes. The relevance of the halacha is the person bought one bird of these two birds, and then he died. And now the question is, what do we do with this one bird? This one bird could either be a chatas or it could be an oila. So what Rav Chisda is saying is that the halacha of this bird is that it's considered to be like a bird which is stumin. It wasn't specified what it is. What's the halacha when it's not specified what it is and the owner passes away? So now you have to this bird, and it becomes an adava for the Beis HaMikdash as a carbon ayla. That was the halacha of Moshe Misinai. Right? And now again, Rav Chisda said the only time it becomes specified is either if the Bailam l'chatchila, when they bought this bird for the carbon specified, or when the Kayin brings it as a carbon, then it's specified. But otherwise, the bird that was bought is considered to be unspecified, even though it could be also for a chatas. And the halacha l'Moshe Misinai will apply over here, that if the owner dies, it's going to have to become an adava for an oila. But the question again of the Gemara is, Amai hamois gimin law. Didn't we say that this halacha l'Moshe Misinai, that the funds that were not specified become a oila if it's not used for its carbon, it's only for money, not for anything else? That's the question here. So this is what Rav Shimi bar Ashi was asking Rav Papa. So Amalei, so Rav Papa answers him back and says to him, well, the time may, so now, according to your opinion, that you're trying to prove from here that it's not only money, right? Not only money, anything, any other item, just like we see over here regarding birds that are not specified. So you should say maybe regarding animals as well, or any other item, anything that you makdish for a carbon, and it's not specified what it is, even if there's a chatas in it, if it's not going to be brought for the carbon that it has to be brought for, because the owner died, so then it just becomes an adava for an oila. So all the time, according to your reasoning, that would be true. So if so, this Mishnah that it says here later in the Masechta. Rab Shimon ben Gamliel says, Hevi shalosh behemos. If a person was makdish 3 different animals for his nazirus, at the conclusion of a person's nazirus, you have to be makdish a chatas, an oila, and a shlamim. And he brought 3 different animals. V'loi pirish, but he didn't specify clearly when it was makdish them that this is the chatos, this is the oila, and this is the shlamim. So the Mishnah says, Haru'oya chatos, the animal that's fit to be a chatos, which is an akeva. The chatos is brought from a kizba, which is an akeva. So tikrav chatas, that one is automatically going to be brought for a chatas. The owner doesn't have to say it clearly. It's roi to be a chatas and not anything else, because only the nekeva could only be a chatas. It's a chatas. La'oila, the one that's roi to be the oila, which is a keves, and the keves could only be an oila, can't be the shlamim, can't be a chatas. The shlamim is brought from an ayol, so the one that is roi for the oila, it's an oila. L'shlamim, the one that's roi for a shlamim, which is an ayol, a ram, that's what it has to be brought for. So tikrav shlamim, it's brought as a shlamim. So what do you see over here? He's being makdish 3 animals without ever specifying what they're intended to be brought for, but automatically it's brought, each carbon is brought for what it is without the owner specifically specifying what it is. But the question is, why is it automatically brought for the carbon that it is? Ha'amrit, didn't you say, Rav Shimi bar Ashi is trying to argue and say that beheme lav k'mufureshes damye, that just like there's a halacha l'Moshe Misinai regarding monies, that you dedicated for karbanis, and it's stumin, it's not specified what it is. Rav Shimi bar Ashi was arguing that the same thing applies to birds, the same thing should apply to behemoths also. If it's not specified for what it is, then it's stumin. So you can't just bring this animal for Eila, this one for Chatas, and this one for Shlamim. The owner himself should have to come and specify what it is before it's brought as that carbon.
How can you compare the two birds? The two birds each bird could be either.
And for the Gemara, Amalei, so Rav Shimi bar Ashi answers, and there's no comparison. Hasam, over there, when it comes to the birds, what does the Torah say? V'lokach, v'asa, lashon of the pasuk there is, l'kacha shtei teirim, shtei b'nei yaina, and then it says, v'asa, es ha'echad min ha'teirim, oy mi b'nei yaina, you take one of them for a chatas and one of them for a oila. Amar Achmana, that's what the Torah says. So therefore, over there, ibelekichas bailim, when does it become specified for the carbon that it is? Either the owner himself specified when he bought it, ibasiyas kayin, or the kayin specifies when he actually is makriv it. But if the owner didn't specify, or the kayin didn't specify, so it's not going to become clear on its own. Because the v'lakach v'asa, the Torah there says, you're going to take echad from these b'nei yaina achatas, and one of them an oila. So, like you said, either one of them could be either one. So someone has to specify this. Otherwise, it would be stumin. It's considered to be unspecified. But hacha over here, now some take out the word nami, because usually hacha nami in a Gemara is always read like here too, but it's not what the Gemara means. Hacha over here, when it comes to this case that we just brought, of the behemoths that were dedicated for the karbanis of a Nazir, mi matzis amris, would it be possible to say, even though the owner, when he was makdish these animals, he never specified what is for what, but could you say, hadein chatas tikrav, oila, that this animal that could only be brought for a chatas, should be brought for an oila? It's an animal that's an akeva. It only could be brought for a chatas. So are you going to say that it would be brought for a oila? Hacha nekeva, hacha zachar. The one that's brought for a chatas is an akeva, and the one that's brought for an oila is a zachar. So the point the Gemara is saying is that over here you don't have to specify. It's clear on its own. It's automatically clear because these are the behemoths that are only right to be brought for its specific carbon for what it is. Okay, so basically, the Gemara doesn't really answer this because it comes out that the question that Rav Shimi bar Ashi asked in the beginning when he brought from Rav Chisda remains a question. The Gemara before on Daf Chavav said that this halacha of moi stumin, this halacha of Moshe Messina applies only to money. Rav Shimi bar Ashi asked, but we see that it applies to oifis as well. And the Gemara is not answering it. Rav Papa tried to argue with him and say that if you're going to say that it applies by oifis, that it should apply by behemoths as well. And the Gemara just answered, no, behemoths is different. These behemoths we're talking about here is different because these behemoths, it's clear automatically what it is. So that's it. L'chayre, his question remains a question. Okay, but now the Gemara goes back to another point that it brought before from Rav Nachman. What did Rav Nachman say before in the Gemara? That even if you're going to say that this halacha l'Moshe Misinai is only regarding money and not regarding other items, but mashal, not regarding a behemoth, but Rav Nachman said that there's a difference. Depends what types of behemoths you are makdish. If you're makdish a behemoth, that in order to use the value of this behemoth for a carbon, you're going to have to wait until it becomes a balmum. And then you can sell it. And then you can use the funds for a carbon. So that's not similar to money because it's not prepared, it's not ready, you have to wait. But if you are makdish a behemoth, which is a balmum from the beginning, so you can right away sell it. You don't have to wait till it gets a mum. You sell it, and you take the money for a carbon. So the halach l'Moshe Misinai regarding moi stumin applies to a behemoth, which is a balmum. That was the vart that was the chiddush that Rav Nachman said. So on this, the Gemara comes back now and asks, Masav Rav Amnuna asked, Umi Amrina, do we say behemas balas mum, that if you makdish a behema that's a balmum, kistumedamya, that it has the same halacha as money that was not specified? Tashema, come on here and ask you a question from the following Braise. So it says in the Braise, this is a halacha we're going to learn soon over here on Daf Lamed. Keitzad Amru, how was it said that Ha'ish megaleach al naziris aviv? That a person could bring magaleach, the term magaleach, whenever it's used in Masechta Nazir, most times it means karbanis. Because when you bring the karbanis of Naziris, you cut your hair. So how could it be that a person is going to bring a carbon using the karbanis that his father was makdish for his Naziris? I said, this is, we'll learn soon in the Mishnah. It said this halacha l'Moshe Misinai, that the father is makdish his karbanis, and his son could use the father's karbanis for his own Naziris. But when was this said? Bizman shahaya, the Bach takes out the word who over here. Bizman shahaya aviv Nazir, in a time when the father was a Nazir, and v'hifrish aviv mois l'nazirusai. The father set aside money for his Nazirus, umeis, and now the father died. So now there's this money left over from the father's Nazirus. So what happens with this money? Now what happened? Va'amar, the son said, Hareni Nazir, I'm going to be a Nazir, al menash agaleach al mois abba. and I'm going to use the monies of my father for my carbon. That's the condition of my Naziris. In such a case, he can take the monies of his father and use it for his own carbon. Okay, that's what the Braisa says in the Reisha. Now, there's something sort of missing over here in the continuation of the Braisa. Most Rishonim learned the pshat over here, and the next part of the Braisa is this halacha here, that a son could use his father's money for the Naziris is only in such a kind of situation when the father was alive, he was a Nazir, and the son was not a Nazir. The son took upon himself to become a Nazir after the father died, and the leftover money was already sitting there. And he says, I'm going to be a Nazir, that is, and take this leftover money for the karbanos of my Naziris. What happens if the father and the son were both Nazirim together at the same time when the father was alive? And the father then had money that he was makdish for a Nazir. Then the son can't use the father's money for his Naziris. And that's a continuation of the Braisa. In such a situation, when the son cannot use that money, and the father dedicated money for his Naziris. If the father dedicated money for his Naziros, and it was not specified, b'chlal, what it's going to be used for, and what happened, now the father died, and the karbanos, this money can't be used, so yiplu l'nedava. So this is the halacha we learned already before in the Mishnah, before in Daf Chav Daled. It said any money that's not specified, that was dedicated for a Nazir, and in this money it's supposed to be used for Ayla, Chatas, Shlamim, but it's not specified, so what happens? It's halacha l'Moshe Sinai that it all becomes an adava as an Ayla. Haisalai behema mufreshes. If he dedicated animals that it was clear what these animals are. So chatos, now the chatos that cannot be brought anymore, the father died. Tamus, that's always the halacha of a chatos that cannot be brought for the carbon that it's intended to be brought for. It has to be left to die. Ayla tikrev ayla. The ayla, even though it can't be brought for naziris, but it will be brought as an ayla. And shlamim as well, yikrev shlamim, will be brought as a shlamim. Okay, so the Braisa here is making a distinction between ma'is stumin and behema when there were behemoths dedicated, which was clear what each behemoth was. Now it says the Gemara, my love, the Braisa here says only in the case of ma'is stumin. That's when I say that it all becomes an adava. That's when the halacha l'Moshe Sinai applies, that if it can't be brought, then it all becomes an adava for ayla. So my love, don't you think afile balas mum, that when it says over here in the Braisa that if it's behemoths, so then the chatos is brought it has to be left to die, and the oil is brought as an oil, and so on. This halacha that it says over here in the Braisa, that when you have behemoths, that by behemoths it does not have the same halacha as ma'is, stumais. So don't you think, even though the Braisa did say behema mufreshes or mifureshes, that it was behemoths, that it was clear what these are, but this would include even a balas mum as well. What's the Gemara's diuk? The reason why the Gemara is medayik this is because when the Braisa talks about the case where the halacha applies, that it's considered to be stumais and yiplul in a dava, that it all becomes an adava. What does the Braisa say? The Braisa says mois. Why does the Braisa say dafka mois? If the Braisa is making a distinction here, so it could have made a distinction between one type of behemoths and another type of behemoths. It could have said behemoths mufrashais, if it's clear which one is a chatas, which one is a ayla, and which one is a shlamim. So then I say that the chatas is left to die, and the ayla and shlamim are brought as an ayla and shlamim. And if it's behemoths that are balimum, and none of them could be brought as any carbon, and it's stumin. If it was behemoths that were stumin, and it was not clear which one is for which carbon, that is yipul and adava. But the Braisa did not make that distinction. It said dafke mois. So therefore the Gemara says, don't you think that if it's animals, even if it's a balmum, so then I say that it's not like money, it's not mois stumin. So this is a question of Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman said that behemoths, which are balimum, because you could sell it right away, it does have the same halacha as money. So the Gemara says, loy temima. When the Braisa said that behemoths, which are mufureshes, that it doesn't have the same halacha like money, which is unspecified, it's speaking dafka about behemoths that are actually temima, which are not a balmum. So the Gemara says, "Avo balas mum kistum adami." So what are you going to tell me? But if it was animals that you were makdish that do have a mum, so then that's going to be the same as money, which is unspecified, that it all becomes an adava. So if so, my area mois. Why is this Braisa making a distinction between behemoths, which are mufureshes, behemoths which are clear what is for what, and they're tmima, they're good for their karbanas, and therefore over there the chatas has to die. So leme, so it's making a difference. Again, it's making a difference between money and behema, which is mufareshes. Leme, the Braisa should have made a distinction regarding behemoth itself. Oisele behemoth balas mum. If you dedicated animals which are balas mum, yiplu l'nadava. Then that, because it's unspecified, it should become a nadava. Instead of making a distinction between money and behemoth, it could make a distinction within behemoth itself. So the Gemara answers, Hachanami balas. Hachanami. You're right. This is taka true. That really the halacha of behemoths which are bali mum is equivalent to money. But what's the reason, taka? Balas mum lamai kedusha. When you're makdish a behemoth as a bal mum, what is the kedusha of this behemoth? You can't bring it on the mizbeach. It's l'demei. It's only holy for this that you can use its money. Dami, hainu mois. If so, if its whole kedusha is just the fact that you could sell it and use its money to buy karbonis with it, it's the exact same thing as money. And that was the whole svara of Rav Nachman. That because the behemoths which are balas mum, right away you go and sell it and buy other behemoths with it, so it's the same as money. So there's no reason for the Braisa to say dafka behemoths bali mum. The Braisa taka says money, but behemoths bali mum is the exact same thing as money. Legabi, the concept of a carbon, a behemoth that's a bal mum that can't be brought as a carbon, is the same thing as money. So therefore, the Braisa, there's no question from this Braisa.
Set aside. Didn't you say before to set aside any behemoth that's not right for the carbon? I have to let it.
Grace to get a mum.
Reason you could say that he meant money over there also.
No. If you're makdish a behemoth, which is tamima,
which can be brought for makdish for
a par l'mashal for.
I mean, 3
I understand, and it can't be brought for that. Yeah. No, but over there the halacha is you have to let it get a mum. You can't. There's no pedia. There's no halacha of being paid a kachim that's roy for the mizbeach if it doesn't have a mum. Halacha by kachim is kachim bedek abayis, kachim which is used for other things. You can be paid a kachim even without a mum. You always can be paid the kachim. Kachim from this beyach that does not have a mum, you can never be paid it unless it has a mum. That's always correct. You still can't be paid it unless it has a mum. But if it has a mum, then you can be paid it right away. So therefore, it's equivalent to money. That's why the Braisa says money. Okay, we're gonna have to stop over here because the Gemara now brings a Braisa that goes all the way down most of the next Amud, and it's one long Inyan. We'll learn Mitzvah tomorrow.